You know, one of the biggest heartbreaks people experience isn't just when someone leaves, it's when that person never comes back, especially when you thought there was something real, something rare. You replay every word, every look, every message, searching for the moment they started slipping away. But here's the truth most people never realize. Avoidants don't come back because they don't feel safe coming back. Not because they don't care, but because connection to them feels like danger. You can't chase someone who's afraid of being caught. Every time you run after them, you confirm their fear that love equals pressure. The key isn't to pull them back, it's to pull yourself back. When you reclaim your energy, when you stop trying to fix them and instead anchor yourself in your worth, something powerful happens. You shift the dynamic. You go from the one waiting to be chosen to the one who chooses. Avoidants are drawn to strength, not need. They crave closeness but fear dependency. So, if you want them to reappear, don't try to show them how much you care, show them how much you've grown. Show them that being with you no longer means losing freedom, it means gaining peace. Let them feel that you're not waiting for them, you're evolving without them. That paradox of calm detachment is magnetic. It tells their nervous system, this is safe, this is balanced, this is love without pressure. And if they do come back, it won't be because you begged, chased, or proved your loyalty. It'll be because your silence spoke louder than your words. Because your healing showed them what they couldn't see before, that love can be steady, not suffocating. So, stop trying to convince anyone to return. You don't need to be someone's unfinished lesson. You are someone's peaceful home, and that home begins with how you treat yourself. When you start embodying calm, confidence, and boundaries, you won't just attract avoidance, you'll attract people who are ready. Ready for your energy, your depth, your truth. And if that person never comes back, maybe it's because life is trying to make space for someone who won't run. Because the real secret is this: avoidants only come back when you've already stopped waiting. When someone with avoidant tendencies pulls away, our instinct is often to chase, to text again, to call, to explain, to fix. We tell ourselves that if they just understood how much we care, they would stop running. But here's what most people don't realize. Every time you chase an avoidant, you reinforce the very fear that made them run. To an avoidant, love can feel like a trap. They crave connection, but they also associate it with losing control, with being overwhelmed, or with being expected to meet endless emotional needs. So when they sense that pressure, even if it comes from genuine affection, their reflex is to escape. The more you move toward them, the more they feel they have to move away. That's why the key isn't to chase them, it's to create a feeling of safety. Safety doesn't mean bending over backwards or silencing your needs. It means showing that your love doesn't come with strings. It means you can care deeply, but still hold your center. When an avoidant feels that your connection doesn't demand constant reassurance, they start to relax. They begin to see love not as something that traps them, but as something that holds space for them. You can't teach this with words, you show it with energy. When you're calm, self-assured, and emotionally grounded, they sense it. When you stop reacting to every withdrawal with panic, they start to feel safe exploring closeness again. It's not about playing games or pretending not to care. It's about embodying emotional independence. You show them that your happiness isn't dependent on their presence. That's when an avoidant starts to feel something they rarely do trust. They realize that being close to you doesn't mean losing themselves. It means being seen, accepted, and allowed to breathe. When you're not chasing, you give them room to miss you. You allow the silence to speak louder than words. Avoidants often need time to process their emotions privately. When you respect that space, they begin to see you differently. They see someone who isn't trying to control them, but who quietly commands respect. Someone who can love without clinging, and that kind of energy is irresistible because it offers something they rarely find: peace. So, if you want an avoidant to come back, don't focus on what you can do to pull them closer. Focus on how you can make love feel safe. Regulate your emotions, set healthy boundaries, and remind yourself that your worth doesn't depend on anyone else's comfort level. The safer you feel within yourself, the safer they'll feel being around you. This is how you shift the dynamic, not through pursuit, but through peace. When you're caught in the emotional storm of someone pulling away, it's easy to think the solution lies in doing more, sending another message, explaining yourself better, or showing them how much you care. But love doesn't respond to effort alone. It responds to energy. The truth is, people don't come back because you convince them. They come back when your energy shifts, when you stop reaching out from a place of fear and start standing tall in your worth. That's when everything changes. Your energy is what teaches people how to treat you. When your self-worth depends on someone's attention, they feel it. It tells them that you need their validation to feel okay. And for an avoidant or anyone unsure about closeness, that kind of dependence feels heavy. But when you redirect that focus inward, when you take the energy you've been pouring into getting them back and use it to ground yourself, they sense the difference. You go from trying to earn their love to realizing you already are enough without it. That shift in energy is powerful because it redefines the relationship. You stop being the one who's waiting, hoping, and trying, and become the one who's centered, calm, and whole. And when someone feels that from you, they start to view you differently. They're not looking at someone desperate for approval. They're seeing someone confident enough to walk away if the connection no longer serves their peace. That kind of quiet strength is magnetic. It speaks louder than words ever could. You don't need to announce that you've grown. Your energy announces it for you. This isn't about pretending to be indifferent or playing hard to get. It's about emotional alignment, when your focus shifts from how do I make them stay to how do I take care of my own heart. Everything about your presence changes. You respond instead of react. You listen without trying to control the outcome. You begin to operate from a sense of fullness, not emptiness. That's what draws people back, not because they suddenly realize your worth, but because they can now feel it. Energy speaks in silence, in posture, in how you hold yourself after the goodbye. It shows up in the way you smile, the way you set boundaries, and the way you no longer chase what isn't meant for you. When your energy says, I am whole with or without you, it releases the tension that keeps love from flowing freely. That's when an avoidant or anyone who is unsure starts to feel safe returning, not because you need them, but because your energy welcomes them without pressure. The moment you shift from chasing to attracting, from fear to faith, you stop waiting for them to choose you and start choosing yourself. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood parts of love. People often confuse it with coldness or indifference, as if stepping back means you've stopped caring. But true detachment isn't about giving up on someone, it's about giving up the illusion of control. It's understanding that you cannot force timing, emotion, or connection. You can only hold space for it. When you stop trying to grip so tightly, you allow love to breathe, and in that space, something incredible happens. People begin to feel drawn to you again. Avoidants, in particular, are sensitive to pressure. When they sense that love comes with expectations they can't meet, they instinctively retreat. The more you chase, the more they run, not because they don't care, but because closeness feels like a loss of self. That's why detachment is magnetic. It creates the safety they crave but don't know how to ask for. When your energy says, I'm here, but I'm not depending on you for my peace, they start to feel that being near you doesn't mean being trapped. It means being free. Detachment also brings clarity. When you're constantly reacting, analyzing, and reaching, your vision becomes clouded. You can't tell whether someone is meant for you or just familiar. But when you step back, you give yourself space to see the relationship for what it truly is. Sometimes the silence reveals more than the words ever did. You start to notice who checks in, who respects your space, and who only shows up when it's convenient. That awareness is powerful because it shifts your focus from chasing to choosing. You stop asking, why aren't they coming closer? And start asking, do they even deserve a place this close to me? In emotional detachment, your power returns. You're no longer fueled by anxiety or fear, you're guided by peace. It doesn't mean you stop feeling, it means you feel deeply without letting those feelings drive you into desperation. That's what makes you magnetic. People can sense when your heart is open but not needy, loving but not lost. That kind of energy creates curiosity. It makes someone wonder what's changed, what gave you that quiet strength. When you're detached, you're not waiting for someone to come back, you're simply allowing what's meant to stay to stay. The irony is that this calm, self-assured energy often pulls people closer. It invites them to reconnect without pressure, without guilt, and without fear. You become a safe space instead of a storm, and in love, safety is the most irresistible force there is. Detachment isn't about walking away, it's about standing tall. It's not about withholding love, it's about releasing control. When you can hold love gently, not clutching it, not fearing its loss, you stop chasing and start attracting. That's when love, if it's meant to, finds its way back to you naturally. When someone pulls away, the natural instinct is to try harder to prove your value, to show them why you're worth staying for. You might find yourself over-explaining, over-giving, or overcompensating, hoping they'll finally see what you bring to their life. But the truth is, love built on proving isn't love, it's performance. And performances always end. The people who stay are the ones who feel your energy, not the ones who are convinced by your effort. Growth, not proving, is what makes someone take notice, because growth changes your entire presence. When you stop trying to prove your worth and start living from it, your energy shifts from need to knowing. You no longer approach love as something to earn. You recognize it as something to share. That change is subtle but profound. It shows up in how you communicate, calm instead of anxious, confident instead of pleading. It shows up in how you set boundaries clear, kind, and unapologetic. You begin to carry yourself as someone who doesn't need validation to feel valuable. And that is deeply attractive, especially to someone who once took your effort for granted. Avoidants often fear being consumed by love. When they sense that your affection comes from insecurity, it confirms their belief that relationships equal pressure. But when they see that your peace doesn't depend on their approval, it disarms them. You become safe, not because you hold back love, but because you give it from abundance instead of emptiness. They start to realize that being with you doesn't mean becoming your entire world. It means being invited into a world that already has meaning. That's what growth looks like. Not trying to fill someone else's silence, but learning to thrive in your own. Growth also means seeing rejection differently. Instead of asking, why wasn't I enough? You begin to ask, why did I believe I had to prove I was? Every moment of trying to convince someone to choose you teaches you something about your old patterns, the parts of you that equated effort with worth. When you heal those patterns, you stop chasing unavailable people. You begin attracting those who meet you where you are, not where they can control the pace. Proving yourself drains your power. Growing into yourself restores it. When you focus on your evolution, on becoming more grounded, more self-aware, more whole, you naturally shift the kind of love you draw in. People sense when you're standing in your truth. They sense when your silence isn't about punishment, but peace. And that energy commands respect in a way no words ever could. You don't need to persuade anyone to see your value. You only need to embody it. The more you grow, the less you chase. Because once you realize your worth, you stop auditioning for roles that were never meant for you. And that's when the right people, including the ones who once ran, finally recognize what they almost lost. There comes a moment in every heartbreak when you realize that waiting is no longer love, it's self-abandonment. You've spent so much time hoping they'll come back, watching their every move, replaying memories like clues in a mystery. You tell yourself that if you hold on a little longer, they'll remember what you had. But the truth is, healing begins not when they return, but when you do, when you come back to yourself. Homecoming is the moment you stop searching for closure in someone else's actions and start creating peace from within. It's when you remember that your heart belongs to you first. When you're caught in the cycle of waiting, your life pauses. You measure your days by their silence, your worth by their attention. But when you finally turn inward, everything changes. You begin to see that your power was never in getting them back, it was in learning to stand tall without them. You start to fill the empty spaces with self-discovery instead of self-doubt. You realize that you can love deeply without losing your center. That's what homecoming really is, returning to the version of you that existed before the longing took over and building from there. It's not an easy journey. At first, detaching from the fantasy hurts. You miss the potential, the moments that made you feel seen. But slowly, you begin to see yourself differently. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start recognizing, "There was nothing wrong, I was just giving love to someone who couldn't hold it." That shift is powerful. It transforms the narrative from rejection to redirection. Instead of chasing their return, you start rebuilding your own. As you come back to yourself, your energy changes. You walk differently, speak differently, carry yourself with quiet confidence. You no longer seek validation through their presence. You find it in your own growth. And here's the paradox that's often when people notice. When you're no longer waiting, your energy becomes light, unburdened. You radiate calm instead of craving. That's when avoidants, or anyone who once took your love for granted, begin to sense what they've lost. But by then, you're no longer the same person they left. You've become whole. Homecoming doesn't mean you close your heart. It means you open it in a healthier way. You start loving yourself with the same devotion you once reserved for others. You stop begging for crumbs because you've remembered how to feed your own soul. You begin to see that love isn't something you chase, it's something you create from within. And when you reach that space of inner peace, you stop waiting for someone to return, because you realize you were never truly abandoned. You just needed to find your way back home to yourself. In the end, love isn't about chasing, convincing, or waiting. It's about returning to your own power. When you stop begging to be chosen and start choosing yourself, everything changes. The people meant for you will feel your peace and meet you there. Those who can't will simply fall away. Remember, your worth isn't measured by who stays, but by how deeply you stay true to yourself. Thank you for listening, for opening your heart, and for daring to grow not for anyone else, but for the beautiful, grounded, and powerful person you are becoming.